Have you ever stopped to consider that what the modern world now calls mindset, visualization, emotional regulation, body language, affirmations, or even manifestation did not suddenly appear in recent centuries? None of these ideas are inventions of contemporary self-help culture. They were not born in motivational seminars, psychological trends, or productivity frameworks. What changed over time was not the mechanism, but the vocabulary. These principles have existed since the beginning because they are embedded in the very architecture of the human being. They are not external tools that must be added to life. They are internal systems that were always meant to function in alignment. Long before neuroscience began mapping neural pathways, or psychology began naming cognitive patterns, this structure was already understood, intuitively, spiritually, and practically. Jesus understood this completely. He did not teach techniques because he was not working from methods. He did not introduce formulas because he was not operating from theory. He spoke as one who knew the original design. When he addressed people, he was not offering something foreign to them. He was revealing what had always been present but forgotten. His words were not instructions added from the outside. They were reminders that awakened what was already within. This is why his teaching carried such authority, not because of volume, persuasion, or rhetoric, but because it resonated with something fundamental inside the listener. Truth, when recognized, does not argue, it aligns. The mental error Jesus corrected, often without a single spoken rebuke, emerges precisely when the human being disconnects from this original source and begins to live in fragments. Thought moves in one direction, emotion in another. The body responds with tension while the mouth speaks faith. Belief becomes language, but fear becomes the internal climate. This division is not merely spiritual, it is structural. A divided mind produces a tense body. A tense body weakens expression. A weakened expression distorts outcomes. Jesus saw this fragmentation immediately. The Gospels repeatedly state that he perceived what people were thinking before they spoke. This was not mystical mind reading in the sensational sense, it was perceptual clarity. He understood that speech is often a mask, but internal imagery never lies. The issue was rarely what people said, the issue was what they were sustaining internally while they spoke. This principle did not originate in the New Testament. It was already articulated centuries earlier. As a man thinks in his heart, so is he. This statement is not poetic metaphor, it is structural truth. Thought is not an abstraction, it is formative. It is the first layer of creation. Reality does not begin in action, it begins in conception. Jesus operated at this level of awareness consistently. When he said watch or be vigilant, he was not referring merely to external behavior. He was calling attention inward. Observe what is forming inside you because everything emerges from there. No lasting transformation begins outside. No miracle remains stable without internal coherence. The mental error Jesus addressed in silence was the misalignment between professed belief and lived internal state. People spoke of trust while imagining loss. They prayed while rehearsing failure. They asked for change while internally submitting to fear. The human mind never stops forming images. Imagination is constant. The question is not whether you imagine, it is what you imagine when no one else is watching. Jesus understood that imagination functions as a bridge between the invisible and the visible. This is why faith is described not as emotion, but as evidence. Evidence is not a feeling, it is a sustained internal conviction. It is an image held with certainty. When Jesus spoke, he was not motivating belief, he was describing order. First alignment, then manifestation. First internal coherence, then external response. The ordinary mind reverses this sequence. It waits to see before it believes. The aligned mind believes and therefore sees. This is not optimism, it is the operational logic of spiritual reality. Modern science has only recently begun to approach this understanding. Neurology now confirms that the brain responds to vividly imagined experiences in nearly indistinguishable from physical ones. But Scripture articulated this long before, when it described God calling into being what did not yet exist as though it already were. Jesus also understood the role of speech, not as sound, but as extension. Words are not neutral. They carry posture, intention, belief, and emotional charge. This is why he said that every careless word matters, not because God is punitive, but because words reveal internal alignment. Speech does not initiate reality, it confirms it or contradicts it. From Genesis onward, creation unfolds through speech, but speech itself emerges from intention. Before "let there be light," there was awareness. Consciousness precedes expression. The mental error arises when speech declares something the internal state cannot support. A person says, "I trust," while the body remains braced, breath shallow, posture closed, thoughts racing. The body exposes the truth. It always does. Jesus knew this. Notice how often his commands involved physical repositioning: rise, stand, go. These were not merely movements, they were internal recalibrations. Posture alters mental state. Mental state alters perception. Perception reshapes experience. Nothing operates in isolation. Everything is interconnected. Jesus did not separate spiritual life from embodied life. Faith was not divorced from behavior. Thought was not divorced from physiology. The mental error Jesus addressed in silence was the misalignment between professed belief and lived internal state. Nothing operates in isolation. Everything is interconnected.
This is why environments saturated with disbelief resisted transformation. Not because divine power was absent, but because collective internal states could not sustain coherence. Reality responds to dominant consciousness. This principle is illustrated quietly in one of the most revealing moments of Jesus' life. Amid a violent storm, while experienced fishermen panic, he sleeps. The relaxed body reflects the settled mind. The settled mind reflects authority. When he awakens, he does not address the storm first. He addresses the internal state of the disciples. Why are you afraid? Only then does the external environment reorganize. The sequence never changes. First within, then without. Many modern teachings isolate fragments of this truth. They discuss visualization, affirmation, emotional control, posture, identity. But detached from the source, these fragments become effort. Without alignment, the mind fatigues. Without alignment, control replaces cooperation. Jesus did not control reality. He aligned with the Father. I do nothing on my own. This is not passivity, it is absolute coherence. When human consciousness harmonizes with divine consciousness, action becomes effortless. The mental error also manifests as urgency. Hurry is a symptom of misalignment. Trust does not rush. Coherence does not agitate. Jesus never appeared late, even when he arrived after expectations. He understood that time itself responds to consciousness. Martha hurried. Mary remained. Jesus revealed the principle without condemnation. One thing is necessary: stillness, presence, internal unity. True transformation rarely occurs when something new is learned. It occurs when something ancient is remembered. You were not designed to fight your mind. You were designed to govern it. You were not created to repeat unconscious patterns. You were created to align thought, speech, body, and spirit. This was the life Jesus embodied, often without explanation, often without correction. His silence was not absence, it was authority. Silence, when coherent, reorganizes environments. When alignment occurs, effort dissolves. Faith becomes state, not struggle. Speech becomes decree, not attempt. The body responds instead of reacting. Resistance fades into cooperation. This is not mysticism, it is structural integrity. When Jesus said, "The kingdom of God is within you," he was not offering comfort through metaphor, he was revealing design. The kingdom is not a destination, it is a mode of operation. It is a governing state that organizes perception, behavior, and outcome. The mental error he corrected was ignorance of this internal governance. People searched externally for what was already operating internally, without order. They believed, yet remained exhausted. They prayed, yet stayed confused. They acted rightly, yet felt divided. Scripture consistently points inward first. Before David sought external change, he asked for internal restoration. He understood that coherence inside produces order outside. Jesus lived this awareness fully. When he prayed, "Your will be done," it was not resignation, it was synchronization. Divine will does not need enforcement when consciousness is aligned with it. Modern psychology now confirms that sustained mental states shape behavior, posture, decision-making, and even physical health. Neuroscience observes that repeated thought patterns reorganize the brain itself. But Paul articulated this long ago. Be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Renewal is not information acquisition, it is perceptual reorientation. It is learning to respond instead of react. Jesus also understood imagination as a formative faculty, not fantasy, but rehearsal. This is why he taught in parables. Parables generate internal imagery. They place the listener inside the narrative. They cultivate spiritual imagination. What the mind can clearly see within begins to take shape without. This is why faith is evidence, not wish. Evidence is internal certainty, a silent knowing, an image held without strain. Jesus often asked, "Do you believe I can do this?" This was not theological examination, it was internal alignment. He was positioning consciousness before manifestation. Speech, again, played a central role. Life and death are in the power of the tongue. This is not superstition, it is mechanics. Spoken words are the audible expression of internal state. When aligned with conviction, they carry weight. When aligned with fear, they disperse energy. Jesus never spoke casually. His words came from stillness, not urgency. This is why they carried authority. The mental error emerges when people use words as tools rather than expressions. Empty affirmations exhaust. Declarations without conviction frustrate. Jesus taught alignment, not repetition. When he spoke of moving mountains, he was not describing frantic insistence. He was describing speech arising from rest. This is why he withdrew into silence, not to persuade God, but to remain internally synchronized. The body participates in this coherence. Fear contracts. Trust stabilizes. Jesus moved with presence, no rigidity, no haste. When he said, "Stand," identity shifted. The person stopped seeing themselves as immobile. Modern science calls this embodied cognition. Scripture called the body a temple, not merely morally, but structurally. Fragmentation disperses force. Alignment concentrates it. Jesus corrected the mental error quietly because noise does not heal division. Silence reveals it. This is why he did not answer every question, why he remained silent under accusation. Reactivity exposes inner conflict. Alignment requires no defense. Identity clarity eliminates anxiety. I am. Being precedes doing. Jesus lived from being. Action flowed naturally. Control is another symptom of misalignment. Excessive concern arises where trust is absent. Anxiety is imagination without governance. Faith is imagination aligned with truth. The modern world teaches pieces of this truth without coherence. Jesus restored the whole. And perhaps now you are sensing that this path is not about adding techniques, but removing noise. Not doing more, but aligning better. Not striving, but remembering. The kingdom is simple, not shallow, but simple. It operates through clarity, presence, identity, and trust. Jesus embodied this fully. His coherence gave weight to every word. Fragmented minds speak endlessly. Integrated minds speak once, and reality responds. The invitation is not to change everything overnight, but to observe. Notice what you sustain internally when no one sees. Observe without judgment. Awareness itself begins alignment. When alignment begins, life responds differently, not because circumstances change, but because your position within them does. Jesus never promised calm conditions. He promised internal peace. That peace is not emotion, it is structure. And structure sustains. When internal alignment begins to form, something subtle but decisive shifts within a person. The struggle does not disappear immediately, but its nature changes. The mind stops fighting itself. Instead of being pulled simultaneously toward fear and faith, toward desire and resistance, toward trust and control, it begins to move in a single direction. This is not suppression, it is integration. Jesus lived entirely from this integrated state. One of the least discussed yet most powerful elements of his consciousness was his mastery of attention. Attention is not merely focus, it is the steering mechanism of the mind. Wherever attention rests consistently, internal energy flows. Wherever energy flows repeatedly, structure forms. And wherever structure forms, reality responds. This is why distraction is not a neutral habit, it is fragmentation in motion. A divided attention produces a divided life. Jesus never appeared distracted. He was interrupted constantly, yet never internally dislodged. Crowds pressed him, demands surrounded him, crises unfolded around him, but his center remained stable. This stability did not come from emotional suppression or detachment. It came from clarity of identity and intentional placement of attention. This is why he could say, "Do not worry about tomorrow." This statement is often misunderstood as moral instruction or unrealistic idealism. In reality, it is a statement about attentional discipline. Anxiety is attention projected into imagined futures without grounding in truth. Guilt is attention anchored to irretrievable pasts. Both remove consciousness from the only place where alignment can occur, the present. Jesus lived in what could be called absolute presence, not as a technique, but as a natural consequence of internal unity. The present moment is the only space where the kingdom operates. This is why so much of Jesus' teaching appears deceptively simple. Ask, seek, knock, watch, remain. These are not abstract spiritual metaphors, they are attentional instructions. They direct consciousness toward engagement rather than rumination, toward observation rather than reaction. When the mind learns to remain, it stops leaking energy into imagined scenarios that never materialize. The body follows this shift immediately. Breathing slows, muscles release unnecessary tension, perception widens, the nervous system exits survival mode and enters coherence. Jesus did not need to teach this explicitly because he embodied it. His presence alone recalibrated environments. People calmed simply by being near him. This is not charisma, it is nervous system entrainment. A regulated system stabilizes dysregulated systems around it. This is one of the reasons crowds followed him relentlessly, not merely because of miracles, but because coherence is felt before it is understood. The human system recognizes alignment instinctively. It longs for it. The mental error Jesus corrected in silence also manifested as misplaced identity. People identified themselves primarily through condition, history, failure, illness, social role, or reputation. Jesus consistently bypassed these labels and addressed the core. You are forgiven. You are free. Your faith has made you well. Notice the structure of these statements. He did not say, "I healed you," as an external agent imposing change. He identified an internal state that allowed restoration to occur. This is not semantic nuance, it is structural reality. Identity governs behavior more powerfully than willpower ever can. A person who sees themselves as broken will unconsciously reproduce brokenness even while seeking healing. A person who sees themselves as fearful will interpret neutral events as threats. Jesus consistently restored identity before condition. He spoke to who the person was, not merely to what they experienced. This is why he often asked questions that seemed unnecessary. "What do you want me to do for you?" The blind man's condition was obvious. The question was not for information, it was for alignment. It forced the person to articulate internally what they were positioning themselves to receive. Attention, imagination, identity, these are not separate faculties, they are interlocking systems. When attention repeatedly returns to fear-based imagery, the imagination amplifies it. When imagination amplifies it, identity begins to organize around it. And when identity organizes around fear, behavior follows automatically. Jesus interrupted this cycle at its root. This is also why he spoke so often about the heart. In Scripture, the heart is not merely emotional center, it is the seat of orientation. It is where thought, intention, belief, and desire converge. To guard the heart is to guard the internal environment from which life flows. Modern language might call this regulating the internal narrative. Jesus called it keeping watch. The mental error appears when people attempt to change outcomes without changing orientation. They want different results while maintaining the same internal reference points. They pray for peace while feeding anxiety. They ask for provision while rehearsing scarcity. They speak hope while imagining collapse. Jesus never condemned this behavior harshly, he revealed it. Why do you think such things in your hearts? This question appears repeatedly in the Gospels. It is diagnostic, not accusatory. It invites awareness. Awareness is the beginning of governance. Governance does not mean control in the rigid sense, it means stewardship. The mind was not created to run unchecked, it was created to be guided. Left unattended, it defaults to threat scanning and pattern repetition. Governed consciously, it becomes a creative instrument. Jesus demonstrated this governance most clearly in moments of opposition. When confronted with hostility, accusation, or misunderstanding, he did not react defensively. Reaction is a sign that attention has been captured externally. Response indicates internal authority. Silence in these moments was not avoidance, it was non-participation in fragmentation. This is why he remained silent before Pilate. The situation demanded explanation, defense, justification, yet Jesus did not engage. His identity did not depend on approval or outcome. When identity is anchored, explanation becomes unnecessary. Most human anxiety emerges from identity instability. When a person does not know who they are, they constantly seek confirmation through performance, control, or comparison. Jesus eliminated this instability by anchoring identity in being, not doing. I know where I came from and where I am going. This statement alone explains his calm. Comparison dissolves when identity is clear. Jesus never measured himself against others. He never competed, imitated, or defended position. He functioned from purpose, not performance. The mental error corrected in silence also appears in the misuse of effort. Many people exhaust themselves trying to force internal change through intensity. They push, repeat, affirm, declare, strive without addressing internal contradiction. Effort applied to fragmentation multiplies fatigue. Jesus invited rest, not as inactivity, but as reorganization. Come to me and you will find rest. Rest is not sleep. Rest is the absence of internal resistance. It is coherence. It is the state in which energy is no longer consumed by inner conflict. This is why he described his way as light, not because life becomes easy, but because internal friction dissolves. The kingdom does not operate through pressure, it operates through alignment. Another overlooked dimension of Jesus' teaching is his relationship with time. He never appeared hurried. Even when urgent matters were presented, sickness, death, or danger, he moved deliberately. He did not allow external urgency to override internal timing. This is not irresponsibility, it is mastery. Time is experienced subjectively. Anxiety compresses it, presence expands it. Jesus operated from expanded time because his attention was not fragmented. He could arrive late and still be on time because outcomes were not dependent on panic-driven speed. The story of Lazarus illustrates this clearly. Jesus delays intentionally. From the external perspective, this appears negligent. From the internal perspective, it reveals confidence in order rather than urgency. He was not reacting to events, he was operating from alignment. This challenges the modern assumption that speed equals effectiveness. Often, speed is compensation for internal instability. When clarity is absent, urgency increases. When clarity is present, movement becomes precise. Jesus did not chase outcomes. Outcomes followed alignment. This principle also explains his approach to teaching. He did not overload people with information. He spoke selectively. He allowed space. He let questions linger. He trusted that truth, once introduced, would reorganize perception over time. He respected the process of internal integration. The modern mind often demands immediate clarity, immediate results. This impatience is another symptom of fragmentation. When the internal environment is unstable, uncertainty feels threatening. Jesus was comfortable with mystery because his center was stable. Faith, in this sense, is not certainty about outcomes, it is stability regardless of outcomes. This distinction is critical. Many people attempt to use faith as a tool to control results. Jesus revealed faith as a state that renders the mind unshakable. When the mind is unshakable, results align naturally. The mental error corrected in silence also involves misunderstanding power. Power, as Jesus embodied it, was not dominance, it was coherence. It was the absence of contradiction. A mind that is unified exerts influence effortlessly. This is why his authority was felt immediately. People remarked not on his arguments, but on his presence. Authority is perceived before it is explained. This type of authority cannot be trained superficially. It cannot be imitated. It emerges only when thought, emotion, intention, and identity are aligned. This is also why Jesus frequently withdrew. Solitude was not escape, it was recalibration. Silence preserved coherence. Without regular recalibration, even aligned systems drift. This principle applies universally. Any system, mental, emotional, relational, that is not periodically recalibrated accumulates noise. Jesus prevented noise from becoming identity. The mental error arises when people fill silence compulsively. Noise becomes avoidance. Constant input replaces reflection. Jesus resisted this impulse consistently. He allowed silence to do its work. Silence exposes internal misalignment. This is why many avoid it. But silence is also where reorganization occurs. Another dimension of Jesus's internal governance was his relationship with emotion. He felt deeply, compassion, grief, anger, joy, but he was never ruled by emotion. Emotion moved through him without hijacking identity. This is emotional maturity at its highest level. He could weep without despairing. He could be angry without losing control. He could feel compassion without becoming overwhelmed. Emotion served awareness, not the other way around. The mental error emerges when emotion becomes identity. I am anxious. I am angry. I am afraid. Jesus felt fear-inducing circumstances, but fear did not become his state. He taught this distinction implicitly. Do not let your heart be troubled. This is not denial of feeling, it is instruction on containment. Feelings arise, the heart remains governed. Modern psychology now describes this as emotional regulation. Jesus lived it naturally. The same applies to suffering. Jesus did not avoid suffering, but he did not internalize victimhood. Suffering did not define him. Meaning anchored him. Meaning is another stabilizing force in consciousness. When meaning is clear, pain does not disintegrate identity. When meaning is absent, even minor discomfort destabilizes the mind. Jesus' meaning was rooted in alignment, not outcome. He was oriented toward coherence with the Father, not avoidance of difficulty. This orientation freed him from fear of loss. The mental error corrected in silence also manifests in the need for validation. People seek confirmation externally because they lack internal certainty. Jesus did not perform to impress. He did not heal to prove. He acted when aligned, not when pressured. This is why he sometimes refused to perform miracles on demand, not because he lacked power, but because coercion disrupts alignment. He did not allow external expectation to dictate internal movement. Alignment dictates action, not demand. This principle is deeply countercultural. Modern systems reward responsiveness over coherence. Jesus reversed this logic. As this awareness integrates, something significant happens in the human system. The inner war quiets. Thoughts no longer compete relentlessly. The body relaxes into presence. The imagination becomes ordered. Identity stabilizes. From this state, behavior changes without force. This is why Jesus focused so little on behavioral modification. He addressed roots, not symptoms. Identity follows orientation. Orientation follows attention. Govern attention, and the rest reorganizes. This is the silent correction Jesus embodied. He did not lecture the mind into submission. He revealed a way of being in which submission was unnecessary. And perhaps this is the invitation emerging now, not to add discipline, but to remove division. Not to strive harder, but to notice where attention is leaking. Not to control thoughts aggressively, but to guide them gently back to alignment. When attention rests in truth consistently, the mind reshapes itself. This is not instant, it is organic. Jesus trusted this process. He planted seeds, he allowed growth, he did not force transformation. The kingdom grows quietly, first within, then without. As internal alignment matures, identity becomes the central axis around which everything else organizes. Thought, emotion, imagination, behavior, and perception do not operate independently. They orbit identity. Whatever a person believes themselves to be functions as the gravitational center of their inner world. From that center, choices emerge, naturally, not forcefully. Jesus understood identity not as a psychological construct, but as a state of being. He did not build identity, he inhabited it. This distinction is essential. Built identities require maintenance. Inhabited identity requires only presence. This is why Jesus could move through radically different contexts, solitude and crowds, honor and rejection, abundance and scarcity, without internal disruption. Circumstances changed, but his center did not. Most human suffering emerges not from circumstances themselves, but from identity displacement. When identity becomes conditional, tied to success, approval, health, performance, or stability, fear becomes inevitable. Anything that can be lost becomes a threat. Jesus eliminated this threat by anchoring identity in being rather than possession or outcome. I am. This statement is not theological abstraction, it is existential clarity. Being precedes doing. When being is secure, doing becomes fluid. The mental error Jesus corrected silently was the unconscious attempt to secure identity through external reinforcement. People wanted signs, validation, recognition, assurance. Jesus refused to provide identity externally because identity cannot be sustained that way. This is why he often redirected attention inward when people sought confirmation outward. He did not feed dependency, he restored agency. The imagination plays a critical role in this restoration. Imagination is not childish fantasy, it is the mind's capacity to simulate reality internally. It is how the invisible becomes experientially real before it manifests externally. Jesus understood imagination as a formative womb. This is why he consistently spoke in images rather than abstractions. Seeds, soil, light, bread, water, paths, doors. These are not decorative metaphors, they are cognitive anchors. An image bypasses resistance. It enters the mind quietly and begins reorganizing perception from within. This is why argument rarely transforms people, but do. Stories activate imagination. Imagination reorganizes identity. Identity reshapes behavior. Jesus' parables were not moral lessons, they were internal recalibration devices. The mental error arises when imagination operates unconsciously. Left unguided, imagination defaults to threat rehearsal. The mind begins projecting loss, danger, humiliation, scarcity. These internal simulations activate physiological stress responses as if the threat were real. Jesus interrupted this cycle not by suppressing imagination, but by redirecting it. Consider the lilies. Look at the birds. Picture a father running to meet his son. These are invitations to replace fear-based imagery with truth-based imagery. Attention follows imagery. Emotion follows attention. Behavior follows emotion. This is not manipulation, it is governance. When imagination is governed, faith becomes natural. Faith is not blind belief, it is disciplined internal vision. This is why Jesus described faith as seeing before seeing. Not hallucination, but internal coherence. A mind that can hold truth internally without contradiction generates stability. Contradiction is the true enemy of peace. Most people attempt to solve external problems while living with internal contradiction. They want one thing while imagining another. They declare trust while rehearsing disaster. They seek change while clinging to familiar identity patterns. This internal division consumes energy continuously. Jesus removed contradiction by simplifying orientation. He consistently returned people to one question: what do you believe? Not as doctrine, but as internal posture. Belief is not intellectual agreement, it is what the nervous system expects. Expectation governs response. This is why two people can face identical circumstances and experience entirely different realities. The external event is the same, the internal expectation is different. Jesus addressed expectation constantly. According to your faith, as you have believed, your faith has made you well. These statements do not attribute power to belief as magic, they recognize belief as alignment. Alignment removes resistance. Resistance is internal friction. It is the mind arguing with itself. Where resistance exists, flow is impossible. Jesus did not push through resistance, he dissolved it. This is why he sometimes did nothing where resistance dominated. In environments saturated with disbelief, miracles were scarce. Not because divine capacity was limited, but because internal resistance fragmented coherence. Resistance does not block power externally, it disperses it internally. This principle applies universally. Any system, mechanical, biological, or psychological, functions optimally when internal components are synchronized. Misalignment reduces efficiency. Jesus lived in perfect synchronization. This synchronization also explains his authority. Authority is not force, it is clarity without contradiction. A person who is clear internally exerts influence effortlessly. This is why people sensed authority in Jesus immediately. He did not assert it, he embodied it. Authority emerges when identity, intention, and action are unified. The mental error corrected in silence also manifests as over-identification with thought. Many people believe they are their thoughts. Jesus demonstrated that thoughts arise, but identity remains. He observed thoughts without becoming them. This allowed him to respond rather than react. Reaction is automatic, response is conscious. Reaction arises from identity threatened, response arises from identity anchored. Jesus consistently responded. This distinction becomes especially evident in moments of provocation. When accused, insulted, misunderstood, or challenged, he did not defend reflexively. Defense implies vulnerability. Clarity requires none. This does not mean he was passive. He spoke firmly when alignment required it. But his firmness was precise, not emotional. Anger, when expressed, was purposeful, not reactive. This level of emotional intelligence is not learned through technique. It emerges from internal unity. Another dimension of identity clarity is freedom from narrative compulsion. Many people live inside stories about themselves, stories of limitation, failure, victimhood, or superiority. These narratives shape perception and behavior unconsciously. Jesus did not live inside narrative, he lived inside presence. Narratives collapse in presence. This is why he consistently brought people out of their stories. The man at the pool had a story explaining why he could not be healed. Jesus did not debate the story. He asked a simple question: "Do you want to be made well?" This question disrupted narrative identification. It shifted attention from explanation to intention. Stories often protect identity. Releasing them feels threatening. Jesus did not attack stories, he bypassed them. Presence dissolves narrative without confrontation. The imagination, when aligned, becomes a powerful creative faculty, but when hijacked by narrative, it reinforces limitation. Jesus trained imagination towards possibility without strain. Nothing is impossible. With God, all things are possible. These statements are not motivational slogans, they recalibrate perceptual boundaries. Boundaries exist internally before they appear externally. This is why Jesus addressed fear so directly. Fear is imagination locked into threat simulation. Faith is imagination aligned with truth. Fear constricts perception. Faith expands it. The mental error corrected in silence also includes misunderstanding humility. Many people confuse humility with self-negation. Jesus embodied humility as alignment with truth, not denial of capacity. He knew who he was. That clarity allowed him to serve without losing identity. False humility fragments identity. True humility stabilizes it. I can do nothing on my own. This statement is not weakness, it is integration. It acknowledges source without diminishing expression. This level of humility eliminates egoic tension. There is no need to prove, defend, or compete.
Competition arises where identity is insecure. Jesus never competed. He collaborated with the Father, with truth, with reality. This collaboration is what allowed him to move effortlessly between action and rest. He did not cling to productivity as identity. He could withdraw without guilt. He could act without exhaustion. Burnout is a symptom of identity fused with performance. Jesus separated being from doing. The mental error arises when people attempt to earn worth through action. This creates perpetual tension. Jesus dismantled this by revealing worth as intrinsic. You are worth more than many sparrows. Worth precedes achievement. When worth is settled, effort becomes expression rather than compensation. This shift changes everything. Imagination, once liberated from fear and narrative, becomes a rehearsal space for alignment. Jesus used imagination not to escape reality, but to prepare consciousness for it. This is why he spoke of counting the cost, envisioning completion, seeing harvest before sowing. These are not business metaphors, they are internal preparation exercises. Prepared consciousness responds differently under pressure.
This also explains Jesus' composure during suffering. He did not deny pain, but pain did not fracture identity. Meaning held him steady. Meaning is the anchor of endurance. Without meaning, suffering destroys coherence. With meaning, suffering refines it. Jesus' meaning was alignment with truth. This alignment allowed him to remain internally free even when externally constrained. Freedom, as Jesus demonstrated it, is not circumstantial, it is internal. The mental error corrected in silence also involves misunderstanding surrender. Surrender is often interpreted as loss of agency. Jesus revealed surrender as alignment with reality. Resistance exhausts. Alignment conserves energy. Not my will, but yours. This is not self-erasure, it is synchronization. When will aligns with truth, conflict dissolves. This is why Jesus experienced anguish without collapse. Conflict was external, not internal. Internal conflict is far more destructive than external adversity. As identity stabilizes, imagination aligns, and contradiction collapses, something profound occurs. The inner environment becomes spacious, thoughts slow, emotional reactivity diminishes, attention becomes steady. From this state, wisdom emerges naturally. Wisdom is not information, it is perception aligned with truth. Jesus spoke wisdom effortlessly because his perception was unobstructed. This unobstructed perception allowed him to see beyond appearances, to see potential where others saw limitation, to see restoration where others saw finality. This vision was not optimism, it was clarity. Clarity sees what is forming, not just what is visible. This is the consciousness Jesus invited others into, not through command, but through demonstration. Follow me. This invitation was not about imitation, it was about orientation. Follow the way of alignment. As this way unfolds internally, external life reorganizes gradually. Relationships shift, decisions become simpler, anxiety loses its grip, peace becomes default. Not because problems vanish, but because identity no longer dissolves in their presence. This is the collapse of inner contradiction. This is the silent correction. When all these elements begin to settle, identity, attention, imagination, emotion, posture, belief, something decisive occurs inside a person. Life stops feeling like a constant internal negotiation. The mind no longer pulls in opposite directions. The body no longer remains in permanent tension. The word spoken begins to match the state lived. This is not perfection, it is coherence. Jesus never invited people into a flawless life. He invited them into an integrated one, a life where the inner world is no longer at war with itself, where faith is not something spoken against fear, but something lived from a stable center. This is the point many miss. The gospel is not primarily about moral improvement or behavioral control. It is about restoration of internal order. Sin, at its deepest level, is not merely wrongdoing, it is misalignment. It is living divided. Thinking one thing, desiring another, imagining a third, and acting from none of them with clarity. Jesus came to restore unity. This is why his message always returned to simplicity, not simplification, but essence. One heart, one eye, one direction, one thing necessary. A divided mind creates noise. A unified mind creates peace. Peace, as Jesus spoke of it, is not the absence of conflict, it is the presence of order. It is what remains steady even when circumstances fluctuate. It is why he could say, "My peace I give to you," not as a feeling transferred, but as a state revealed. That peace emerges naturally when the inner structure is realigned. At this point, effort changes its nature. You still act, you still decide, you still move. But action is no longer driven by anxiety, urgency, or fear of loss. It is driven by clarity. You do not act to become something, you act because you are anchored in who you already are. This is why Jesus could act decisively without strain. Most people are exhausted not because they do too much, but because they do everything from a fragmented center. When thought, emotion, and identity are misaligned, even small tasks drain energy. When alignment is restored, even difficult paths feel lighter. The yoke is easy and the burden is light. This was not poetic exaggeration, it was a structural truth. The burden becomes heavy when you carry internal contradiction alongside external responsibility. Remove the contradiction, and the same responsibility becomes manageable. This also changes the way you relate to outcomes. You still care, you still hope, you still plan, but your sense of self is no longer hostage to results. Success does not inflate you. Failure does not collapse you. Praise does not define you. Criticism does not destabilize you. This is inner freedom. Jesus lived from this freedom constantly. That is why he could be fully present with people without needing anything from them. He did not need admiration, agreement, or recognition. His giving was clean. His love was not transactional. When identity is stable, love flows without fear. This stability also changes the way you experience God. God is no longer a distant authority you try to impress or persuade. God becomes the source you align with. Prayer stops being negotiation and becomes communion. Silence stops being empty and becomes instructive. This is why Jesus prayed so often in silence, not to inform God, but to remain internally synchronized. Alignment must be maintained. The world constantly pulls attention outward. Noise, urgency, comparison, fear, and stimulation all compete for the mind. Without conscious return to the center, fragmentation slowly rebuilds. Jesus knew this. That is why he withdrew regularly. Withdrawal is not escape, it is recalibration. And this is the ongoing invitation. Not to adopt a new belief system, not to master new techniques, not to force yourself into spiritual performance, but to return again and again to the center. To observe your inner state without judgment, to notice where thought, body, word, and emotion diverge, to gently realign them, not through pressure, but through presence. Presence is the great healer. When you are present, you see clearly. When you see clearly, you choose wisely. When you choose wisely, life reorganizes naturally. This is the way Jesus lived. This is the way he taught, often without explanation, often without correction, often without words. His silence was not absence, it was demonstration. And perhaps now it becomes clear why so many teachings today feel incomplete. They extract fragments of truth, mindset, visualization, affirmation, emotional control, but remove them from their source. Without the source, everything becomes effort. With the source, everything becomes flow. Jesus did not offer a method, he revealed a way of being. A way where the kingdom is not awaited, but inhabited. A way where faith is not strained, but expressed. A way where the inner world becomes ordered and the outer world responds accordingly. The kingdom of God within you is not symbolic, it is structural. It is the governing center of human consciousness when aligned with truth. When that center is active, life changes, not always loudly, not always instantly, but deeply and sustainably. And this is the final point. Transformation is not loud. Alignment is not dramatic. Truth does not rush, it settles. If at any moment in this message something resonated not as emotion, but as recognition, as if something ancient inside you quietly nodded, then this is not coincidence. That recognition is alignment beginning to form. You are not broken. You are not missing something essential. You are not failing spiritually. You may simply be divided. And division can be healed not by force, but by awareness. From here, the path is simple, though not always easy. Begin by observing. Pay attention to what you sustain internally when no one is watching. Notice how your body responds to your thoughts. Notice how your words reveal your inner state. Not to judge, only to see. Seeing is the beginning of change. As alignment grows, effort decreases. As clarity deepens, Peace stabilizes. As identity settles, fear loosens its grip, and life gradually begins to respond differently. Not because the world obeys you, but because you are no longer resisting it internally. This is the quiet power Jesus lived from. This is the correction he made in silence. This is the invitation that still stands. If this message helped you see something more clearly, if it brought coherence to ideas you felt but couldn't articulate, then stay connected. Follow this channel to continue exploring these principles at their source, not as trends, not as techniques, but as truth restored. Share this with someone who feels exhausted, divided, or confused, not because they are weak, but because they are misaligned. And remember, the kingdom has never been far. The source has never been distant. The alignment you seek does not begin outside of you. It begins within.